Welcome back to the report. Earlier today, Anjem Choudary, controversial speaker, teacher and activist, was arrested among 9 others in London. Sarah Sai has been following the story.
Controversial preacher Anjem Choudary is one of 9 men arrested in London today for allegedly encouraging terrorism. Scotland Yard have said that the men aged between 22 and 51 were arrested as part of an ongoing investigation into Islamist-related terrorism and that the arrests are not in response to any immediate public safety risk. Counter-terrorism police are believed to be searching another 18 addresses across London and 1 in Stoke-on-Trent. In a statement released this morning, the Metropolitan Police said officers from the Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command have arrested 9 men this morning on suspicion of being a member of a prescribed organisation, supporting a prescribed organisation contrary to Section 11 and 12 of the Terrorism Act 2000 and encouraging terrorism contrary to Section 1 of the Terrorism Act 2006. Al-Muhajiroun is understood to be the prescribed organisation in question. Earlier this week, it was also reported that Choudary has said that he had no sympathy for Alan Henning, the 47-year-old volunteer aid worker who was captured in Syria and who the Islamic State have threatened to behead. Choudary, who co-led the now-banned group Al-Muhajiroun with Omar Bakri Mohammed, has had contact with a number of followers who have later gone on to be convicted of terrorism. Woolwich murderers Michael Adebolajo and Michael Adebowale, both jailed earlier this year for the brutal slaying of Fusilier Lee Rigby, were both seen at demonstrations organised by Al-Muhajiroun. The group, along with associated group Islam for UK, was banned in 2010 after a study into the group's history suggested that 18% of Muslims convicted of terror offences in the UK in the previous decade had current or former links with the group. Never shying away from controversy, Choudary has been known to encourage the burning of poppies, demonstrating at soldiers' funerals and defending the 9/11 attack and London tube bombings. A former lawyer, Choudary has until now never faced charges despite his organisation being banned. Whether Chowdary's arrest is likely to have much of an impact on the continuing flow of these ideas remains to be seen.
Now with me in the studio, Abdullah al Andalusi from the Muslim Debate Initiative and Dr Julian Richards on Skype from the Centre of Security and Intelligence Studies at Buckingham University. Thank you both. Abdullah, can I come to you first? Was this a long time awaited?
Well, I mean, if we look at the actual specifics of the charge, Anjem Choudary was arrested and his colleagues due to, in essence, being connected to Al-Muhajiroun. But this state of affairs, if true, hasn't changed for years. So why now? Why specifically now they arrest him and gathering him up? Could it be that this is before the eve of a parliament deciding about entering into the war against ISIS, against Anjem Chowdary's group, talking about ISIS and perhaps providing theological defences of the legitimacy of ISIS? Possibly, but if so, that means that the police are wielded for political purposes. You know, they're wielded against political dissenters, which is quite worrying. So whether or not the arrests are merited, I know this for certain. Anjem Choudary and his colleague Abu Rumeysa, who I've debated, do not say that they support terrorism, the act like killing civilians and so on. While a lot of what they do say I strongly disagree with, but they've always publicly said they don't support terrorism, that Muslims should obey a covenant of security. So I think we should weigh this up as to is it merited what happened, and if it is, then why do they wait till right now to arrest them and gather them up?
Dr Richards, can I bring you in here? Why now?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is it's difficult to comment on the specifics of this particular operation, because obviously we don't know all the details yet. So it must be connected with some sort of investigation. But with that said, one of the sort of more likely reasons for this happening now, I would say, is because the terror threat level has recently been increased to severe, as we know. And that will trigger a number of extra investigations, extra actions, and this may well be being swept up as part of that process. And we must remember that these Al-Muhajiroun and its offshoots are legally prescribed organisations. So it is an offence under the Terrorism Act to belong to these organisations. And that seems to be the main basis for these arrests today.
Yeah, the allegation that's thought to be the case is that these individuals have been arrested for being a part of banned groups, Al-Muhajiroun, Islam for UK. Abdullah, can I bring you in here? Are they back to this? Is this new? Is this some Islam for UK, Al-Muhajiroun? There's so many different names that we've been hearing.
Sure. Well, if Anjem Choudary had publicly tried to revive, or even secretly tried to revive Al-Muhajiroun, then I'd understand why these arrests would occur right now. But considering that his operations and what he says and anything really hasn't changed as far as I can tell, as far as anyone else can tell, it's just business as usual for Anjem Choudary and his followers or supporters, then it brings the issue as to why they were arrested now. And I think this is something we should draw attention to.
Well, Dr. Richards mentioned there the threat level being raised. Is that something that might be an issue? You mentioned the covenant of security.
Well, just because the government raises a threat level doesn't mean that rule of law no longer applies, or that you can now do things that you couldn't do before. The threat level relates to the UK's readiness to deal with security threats, or what the security threats actually are. But if Anjem Choudary does not oppose any immediate security threats, and if he does not advocate terrorism, neither does his group, as much as I disagree with them, you can't just arrest them now. And if you arrest them now for something they did years ago, then you should have arrested them years ago. So that is my issue as to why then now? Why are they arrested now? And that's something that we should all ask ourselves.
Dr. Richards, can I come back to you on this? With the British Parliament being recalled and the debate tomorrow, has this got anything to do with it?
No, I don't think it has. And remember that the police are not used as a political tool in this country. They operate independently on the basis of the CPS and so on and so forth. And as your earlier speaker said, if nothing has changed, why has he been arrested now? Well, of course, we don't know what has changed or whether anything has changed. And this is obviously part of an ongoing investigation. And it may well be that Anjem Choudary and the others who've been arrested are involved in some activities at the moment to do with the funneling of jihadists to Syria. And that may be why he's been arrested now. We just don't know the details at the moment because they haven't been released.
Dr. Richards, now Anjem has been a pretty big figure for a while now. What sort of a role and impact does he have on the Muslim community here in Britain?
Well, rather a sort of varied role as far as I can understand. I mean, my understanding is that a great number of the Muslim community in Britain, which of course is a very diverse community, are not particularly impressed or pleased with the activities of Anjem Choudary, not least because he brings opprobrium and condemnation down on the community from those outside of it. So I imagine there are quite a number of people, both inside and outside the Muslim community, who are not actually disappointed that he's been arrested today. But of course, that's not the basis for an arrest. The basis for an arrest is criminal acts.
Abdullah?
Well, I mean, if he has been funneling, money to jihadist groups or terrorist groups in Syria, then surely that would be the reason why he's arrested. But to say that it's related to being part of or supporting, let's say, Al-Muhajiroun and its offshoot organizations, that's something which is quite strange for it to be happening now. Now, of course, we don't know. Maybe secretly he was trying to revive it. But considering his modus operandi, where he's very clever about how he operates within the law, whatever he says within the law, and the fact that he's avoided arrest before for Al-Muhajiroun, he disbanded it and so on and so forth, I don't think it'd be unlike him to resurrect Al-Muhajiroun or an offshoot group of it, knowing that this would bring back these arrests. So yes, while we don't know all the evidence, and we'll obviously wait to see this evidence, though, it's just very strange that Anjem Choudary would be arrested now for a crime which he could have been arrested for years ago if he was guilty of it.
As a supporter of ISIS, with Adnani's letter coming out, Anjem Chowdary's arrest, I think it does seem very timely, but with the killings we saw, Al Balajo had attended some of his sermons. Is it the fear factor that's playing in here?
Well, firstly, I mean, I questioned Abu Rumeysa, one of his colleagues, about the Adnani declaration, considering that they've provided a lot of theological apologetics for that organization. So I questioned them about this, and they said that they do not advocate Muslims to break their covenant of security in the UK or any of the Western countries and to commit acts of terrorism. So they disassociate themselves from committing acts of terrorism. They wouldn't comment further on the letter when I pressed them. But if there is a fear factor behind his arrest, this is a problem because we should not live in a country whereby fear is enough to arrest people and imprison them, but rather rule of law and breaking of those laws should be the only consideration. So again, I would like everyone to investigate what are these charges against him, what are the evidence against him, and why now is he being arrested for an issue of an accusation which, if true, it should mean he should have been arrested years ago.
Dr. Richards, you mentioned the threat level. In light of the letter released earlier this week by Adnani, the spokesperson for IS, calling on his supporters to attack people on the streets, do you think that might have had any sort of implication?
I mean, yes, possibly. I mean, the point about the threat level is it means that there is perceived to be a heightened risk of terrorist activity at the moment. So things that might have been considered to be less of a risk before are now considered to be more of a risk, and that could trigger arrests and investigations that might have been left to run before. So I do think that these things are connected in that sense. I don't think this is we're sort of reacting out of fear particularly. We're reacting out of very serious and structured concerns about the level of security threat in the UK at the moment, and all of us would be rather foolish to suggest that there aren't security threats at the moment, and they're rather heightened at the moment because of what's going on in the Middle East.
Dr. Richards, we've not heard the names of, we don't know much about the 9 others who have been arrested. What do we know about people who work alongside Anjem or have been studying or working alongside him in his activities?
Well, as I said earlier, I suspect the key here is involvement and membership of these prescribed organisations. So again, as we've said several times, we don't know many of the details yet, but I suspect the characters who have been arrested today are connected with these specific organisations, Al-Muhajiroun and its offshoots.
Abdullah, now one of the individuals we have heard, I won't name him, is thought to be a ex-boxer, a very famous one who has supported Al-Muhajiroun and has been seen alongside Anjem Choudary. I mean, what is his sort of influence like amongst young Muslim Brits?
Well, I mean, again, it'd be mixed. Many Muslims, when they see the kind of pronouncements by Anjem Choudary, especially on very sensitive matters, we kind of, some of us cringe at when we see it. Some of us are very concerned as to what this will encourage hatred or hysteria of Muslims and Islamophobia in the UK. A lot of it is things that we don't personally agree with within our theology anyway. So there's mixed reactions, but what you will find some resonance is with disenfranchised youth, youth that might not have a future, or they might have low prospects of a career, and added to that the political grievances of the injustice in Western foreign policy and so on. And you have a potent mix of people who can look at Anjem Choudary, look at his supporters, look at this boxer, and feel that. In all this injustice, at least these people are because they are hated, they must be doing something good against this injustice, which is bad logic to look at. I mean, obviously, many people are speaking out against this injustice, but this kind of going against the system, being the hate figure, it appeals to many people who feel disenfranchised by the system. So we have to, pay attention to, the grievances, which I think we all share, the political grievances we all share, but also people who are more vulnerable to finding this message resonant. But I don't think it has much of impact on the Muslim community. However, its impact will be indirectly by the Islamophobia it causes and by the fact that British politicians will use Anjem Choudary's pronouncements as excuses to then clamp down on legitimate political dissent and Islamic beliefs within the Muslim community.
Now, we saw a number of letters, videos, all sorts coming out calling for the release of Alan Henning. I know there we saw in the clip, Anjem Choudary has said Muslims shouldn't be feeling sorry for Alan Henning or even calling for his release.
That is against the the way of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who felt sorry for Jews and felt sorry for Christians. He felt sorry for anyone who was oppressed and unjust. And so I don't know where Anjem Choudary is getting this from. It's almost like it's a gang mentality where you can't feel sorry for someone who's not in your gang. And this is not from the Islamic perspective. For us, we have a concern and we feel sorry for anyone who's suffering. Even in the Quran it says, do not let us be a trial for those who are not Muslims. So it goes against our basic humanity, which Islam inscribes in Muslims to have. So this saying is going to cause more trouble for Muslims, because not only does it not represent Islamic perspective on these things, but it incites hatred against Muslims.
On that note, we are going to have to round up. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We're back tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the earlier time due to live appeals tomorrow night. But thank you to all of my guests and for you for joining us. Remember, you can tweet us your thoughts using the hashtag #TheReport. But for now, we'll leave you with some scenes of a vigil held for Alan Henning.
The Interfaith Council and Bolton Council itself. It's also good that we have some school children here from Great Lever, where the aid convoy set off from. But there are other similar situations involving other individuals whose family and friends will be as equally concerned for their welfare